Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Today I've come to a vague area of the Midlands known as Nottinghamshire, a county famous for coal, excellence and the Sherwood Forest, home of Robin Hood. In fact, the county has a fairly varied history, most of which we'll be ignoring as we take a journey from Nottingham to Worksop. As always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and we're not actually starting in Nottingham at all because there's something I'd like to take a look at. This next bit is absolutely for me. I've always wanted to take a look at a coal-fired power station, in particular one that features several cooling towers. This is Ratcliffe On Soar power station. The 270-hectare site was built in the 1960s and it was capable of generating 2,000 megawatts whilst burning through 5 million tonnes of coal every year and emitting 10 million tonnes of CO2 gases in the process. Yikes. Environmental concerns have led to the closure of all coal-fired power stations around the country, and Ratcliffe was the last to close in September 2024. And after a 2-year decommissioning process, it will most likely be demolished and replaced with a waste incinerator plant. That's much better. But the cooling towers, some of the last surviving examples in the country, and the reason I wanted to come here, they're just amazing structures, aren't they? They're made of reinforced concrete, and these ones stand at 114 metres tall. They're 87 metres wide at the base, and the walls are 7-inch thick. As the name suggests, they're used for cooling. Once you've generated some steam to run your power station, it needs to be collected up and converted back into cool water so it can be reused, and this is what cooling towers are for. Okay, shall we get on with the show then? I'm making my way to our starting location, and to do so I'll be using the minor back roads, which takes us through Gotham. It turns out Batman lives in a quaint village in Nottinghamshire. But what's this? A railway thing? We'll get started eventually, I'm sure, but on the way into Nottingham I noticed this, the Nottingham Transport Heritage Centre, and with parking most convenient, it'd be silly to not stop by. The site used to be a Ministry of Defence ordnance factory where ammunition was made and stored. It employed 4,000 people across 200 different buildings, yet its main function ceased in 1945 for some reason. The site was then used for storage before being sold off in the mid-1980s. There's no trace today of the ammo depot because it's all been redeveloped, but some of the leftover railway infrastructure was used to create the Transport Heritage Centre. Known as Ruddington Field Station, it's the main headquarters for the Nottingham Great Central Railway, who have 10 miles of track that runs down to Loughborough and a fleet of locomotives, including an Intercity 125, this blue one, and a steam engine. I'm in Nottingham now, so we can at least get started on the journey, and in the days of my guidebook, Nottingham was a big old place with around 260,000 residents. Its size is mostly down to Nottingham being a major player within the textile industry, in particular lace manufacturing, and during the Industrial Revolution it was the main employer and income for Nottingham. My guidebook suggests a visit to Nottingham Castle, which sounds exciting until after you pay the £15 entrance fee and realise it's not a castle. Certainly, there used to be a castle here. It was built in 1068, but then mostly demolished in the 1600s and replaced by a large mansion house thing, which is not a castle. A short distance from the Not a Castle is a road known as Raleigh Street, and in the 1880s, a company was set up here known as the Raleigh Bicycle Company, who were perhaps most famous for the Raleigh Chopper, an icon of 1960s design. Most interesting, though, is that in the days of my guidebook, Raleigh were not only busy making bicycles, they were making motorcycles and three-wheeled cars as well, but ultimately decided to give up on making cars in 1934. However, 2 of Raleigh's employees thought these three-wheeled cars were such a good idea, they left Raleigh to set up their own company in Tamworth, which would become known as the Reliant Motor Company. Alrighty, let's get on the way, and we're going to head towards Mansfield, which is a bit of an awkward route, but essentially we'll be needing the A611. As we make our way along, we'll pass by Newstead village, where I thought we'd make a quick stop. Newstead was once known as Newstead Colliery Village, and the clue is in the name. It was a village built for the workers and miners of the Newstead and Annesley Colliery, which opened in the 1860s and operated up until 1987. Around 1,500 people were employed by the mine, and they extracted 470,000 tonnes of coal every year. However, this would later rise to over 1 million tonnes of coal every year following the mine's nationalisation, and then it was all closed down. Remarkably, some of the old colliery buildings remained in place for some time after its closure and can be spotted on Street View. However, today it's all gone and replaced by housing. The only reminders of this once huge industry are the old winding wheels, now an ornament, and the remains of the coal pits, which are now lakes and a nature reserve. Mansfield was also very busy within the coal industry, leading to a population in the town of around 45,000 in the days of my guidebook. However, Mansfield is perhaps more well known for the brewing of beer, with the Mansfield Brewery being the largest independent brewery in the country, founded in 1855. Today there's little to no trace of the coal or brewery industry because it's all been demolished and turned into houses. That said, there is something of interest found on the outskirts of Mansfield in a place called Clipstone, known as the Clipstone Headstocks. It used to be a coal mine, and this is the last coal-related thing for today, I promise. I did say Nottinghamshire was famous for coal. Today it's a heritage museum and a learning centre that not only looks at the mining industry, but things like rally cycles and Robin Hood. They do public tours. It's £8 to get in. You don't need to book, and I thought it was worth a mention. Also worth a mention is this residential street / ex-country estate driveway known as Clipstone Drive. It's quite long and straight, perfect for, I don't know, motor racing perhaps? OK, maybe not today, but for 25 years, starting in 1900, Clipstone Drive became the location of a speed trial event. With the first event being held in 1900, it's said to be the first speed trial and race of its type ever. And it was quite simple, really. You had a mile-long straight course to achieve as high a speed as you possibly could, and you were given a nice chunky run-up as well. To save time, cars were sent out at 30-second intervals, leading to, in some cases, the faster cars overtaking the slower cars via the grass verges in pursuit of a speed record. The highest speed recorded on the first event was 42 miles per hour. Not bad for 1900. OK, it's time to move on from Mansfield, and we're going to make our way to one of the largest tourist grabs in the area, the Sherwood Forest, home of the famous Robin Hood. But there's a bit of a problem with that, because there's no record of any individual known as Robin Hood ever existing. It's most likely a myth, folklore, or just a made-up story. But since we're in a forest, I thought we'd take a look at a tree.
Lovely old tree.
This is the major oak, and it's said to be the second largest oak tree in the country. Oh, OK. It weighs something like 23 tonnes, is 10 metres wide, and is estimated to be around 800 to 1,000 years old, and it's been voted as Britain's favourite tree on more than one occasion. I don't know what's worse, the people voting or the people coming up with the vote. And according to myth, folklore and bullshit, Robin Hood's hideout was once located here, and now a canal. Yes, this is the Chesterfield Canal in Worksop. It opened in 1777, and it runs for around 46 miles from Chesterfield to West Stockwith, passing through Worksop on the way. And if it wasn't for the canal, Worksop would probably be a bit of a nothing town, because with the canal came passing trade and the opportunity to ship any locally manufactured goods. For the most part, the people of Worksop couldn't be bothered either way, and there's no noteworthy large-scale industry in the town, but it was a producer of a peculiar crop, licorice. It was grown mainly for medicinal purposes. Occasionally it was used as a sweetener, and sometimes you just eat it as a sweet treat. But when sugar became more readily available in the late 1700s, the industry died out. Interestingly, the local church were involved with growing licorice and had their own gardens solely for the purpose. The Priory Church is also recommended by my guidebook as a place to visit, where we find the ruins of St Mary's Chapel. Except we don't. Certainly there are bits of ruined building, but what my guidebook refers to no longer exists because it's been repaired, restored, and has now become part of the main church building. As a result, you'll notice that the church is mostly a medieval type church with some rather obvious modern additions made to one end that do stand out a bit, and I imagine in later editions of the guidebook this recommendation was removed. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That would be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.